What's up, everyone? I want to have a little chat with you about Skinamarink, a movie that I saw opening day in theaters and can finally talk about because immediately after seeing the film, I came down with a cold and now I can finally go one full minute without coughing and sounding like Kathy Moriarty.
Damn it, Dibs! This won't hurt a bit!
Skinamarink is a new indie film that's been generating a lot of underground buzz upon its limited theatrical release. It's a psychological horror film that people are calling either the most terrifying experience they've ever had in a theater or the worst, most infuriatingly boring thing they've ever had the misfortune of seeing. And though I more or less lean towards the latter camp, my feelings about this film, or rather around this film, are more complex than merely stating the act of watching it was not an enjoyable experience. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the beginning. If you're unfamiliar, Skinamarink is the feature directorial debut of Kyle Edward Ball, the creator of Bite-Sized Nightmares, a YouTube channel where Ball has amassed a collection of experimental interpretive short videos based on recollected nightmares, either crowdsourced or from Ball's own childhood memories. These videos are around 3 to 5 minutes long and seem to mostly consist of static shots of liminal spaces and inanimate surfaces, all in a very lo-fi style. Anyone familiar with the creepypasta era of Reddit will instantly recognize this vibe, and it's part of a recent movement colloquially known as analog horror. Crap. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself again. Maybe I need to spend a little time going over analog horror. Let's start at the beginning. Analog horror is an art movement born on the internet. The name was coined by another YouTube channel named Local58, utilizing purposefully low-definition visuals, artificial film grain, and tape static, and usually containing empty liminal spaces and cryptic or ambiguous narratives. Analog horror harkens back to the bygone eras of Web 1.0 and VHS. Crap. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let's start at the beginning. Kids, VHS tapes were these black... On July 8th, 2020, after 3 years and 36 shorts, Bite-Sized Nightmares posted the video, Heck, Kyle Edward Ball's short film. It was not only a culmination of his work thus far, but a proof of concept of what was yet to come. Ball went on to expand this short film into a feature. Shot in his childhood home over just 8 days on a budget of only $15,000, Skinamarink tells a story both personal and universal. Drawn from his childhood fears and his relationship with his sister, Ball taps into the primal anxieties many of us develop as kids when the world seemed like a confusing colossus and the dark could unravel the worst of our imaginations. Well, going off of its logline, Skinamarink concerns two children who wake up during the night to discover that they cannot find their father, and all of the windows and doors in their house have vanished. That's all I had to go off of. Last year, when I was hearing the rumblings out of the festival circuit that this was a film like nothing you'd ever seen, I thought, well, why spoil my experience by seeing any of it? I didn't read any press releases. I didn't watch any videos. I didn't look at nothing. This was about as blind as I've gone into a film in quite a while. And at the same time, it was also the least blind that you could possibly be before a theatrical release in quite a while. In the fall of last year, the film was slated to run at a European film festival that Ball graciously refuses to name. Hackers broke into the streaming service for the online component, and Skinamarink, as well as a slew of other films, were released into the wilds of the internet. At first, this looked like a disaster, but the film's distribution deal with horror magnate Shudder remained in good standing, and the pirated Skinamarink ended up going viral on TikTok and Twitter, which only strengthened its urban legend status. It's possible the leak and the piracy was, in a way, as much a blessing as a curse. Oh, right. Sorry. Um, in in this segment, I'm supposed to be covering what Skinamarink is actually about, like what happens in the film. I saw this on Friday the 13th this January, like 7 days ago. That cold kind of knocked me on my ass, but I should still be able to recall everything. So, um, okay. So, uh, we we start with a shot of a hallway in a home with the camera set on the floor. We see two children emerge from a room, or rather, we see them from just the calves down. Yeah, get used to that. We can hear the muffled conversation of adults from another room. The number, or year, 1995, appears on the screen. The scene is dark. The cinematography is very lo-fi, and there's a lot of fake grain floating around. This looks like it's going to be a found footage film, but being 1995, I'm not sure what kind of camera is supposed to be filming this action that would produce footage that looks like this. Boom! We get some retro credits in a throwback font. The entire credits for the film run at the start, thank yous and copyrights and all. And now, the movie starts. And, we see some we see some walls, and we see some doors and a hallway, maybe the same hallway. I think at this point we learn that the kids are named Kaylee and Kevin. They're like 8 and 4 or thereabouts. We hear one of them, Kevin, fall down the stairs. We hear their dad talking on the phone with, we assume, the mother. I guess they're separated. He says Kevin is fine, wasn't taken to the doctor, and then mentions that Kevin's been sleepwalking. So then the kids wake up some other night and they can't find their dad. Again, remember that the camera never shows us more than their hands and feet, if that. We then see a few windows disappearing and reappearing and disappearing and reappearing. As far as I can tell, that's as far as that apparently major plot point goes. And, well, the kids don't have a parent to soothe them, so they opt for the next best thing. They go down to the living room, sit in front of the TV, and set up a slumber party bathed in the bright strobing glow of old Fleischer and Ub Iwerks cartoons. Then for the next 90 minutes, we get static shots of walls and ceilings and doorways and floors and Legos on floors and teddy bears on floors and Legos and teddy bears on floors being moved around by the unseen children, and that bright ass TV. I don't know, objects start to stick to the walls and the ceiling, the toilet disappears, some low ominous voice is occasionally heard, unsettling things happen to the children. There's like 3 or 4 really cheap jump scares, like just the worst kind, no build up, just a jump cut set to annoyingly piercing
Loud noises!
Things start to unravel, I guess. 527 days go by. The low, ominous voice tells Kevin to go to sleep. The end. So I really fucking hated watching this. This was one of, if not the most frustrating experience I've had with a film. 99% of the shots have no human beings in them, and when they do appear, we are denied a proper view of them. There isn't actually a single cell in this movie that shows a proper face. The jump scares were the only time I reacted or felt anything. Those reactions were knee-jerk. Those feelings were annoyance and hatred. And worst of all, the look of this film. I truly believe the one thing that needed to be removed from this film was the layers upon layers of faux grain filter. This isn't actually found footage, so it doesn't need the hisses and pops, the hairs and the fuzz, the endless grain and all of the snow. So much snow. This film is buried in a blizzard of snow. I imagine it should work better at home on a smaller screen, projected onto a big screen that took up nearly every inch of my field of vision. It was torturous. Watching this movie physically hurt my eyes. The overabundance of grain effect, coupled with the dark spaces of every room, strained my eyes and made any shot featuring the bright, strobing television or any source of light blinding. To be perfectly honest, I stopped watching this film about an hour in. I sat in that theater staring at the middle distance between the screen and the seats in front of me, or just squinting, or just looking away, or closing my eyes, anything to stop the physical pain this film was inflicting upon me. And then, with about 20 minutes left in the runtime, I had to pee. But I didn't leave. I didn't want to leave in fear that I would miss the one and only part where something, anything, would finally happen. This is the third theatrical experience I've had where, as the film was crawling to the finish line, I had Tom Servo from Mystery Science Theater 3000 in my head, screaming, "And! The other 2 films were Joker and Cats. The guy who sold me my ticket said that I'd be walking out within 20 minutes. Instead, I and the 3 other people in the theater stayed through the whole thing. As the lights came up, it was obvious we all wished we had left before the 20-minute mark. As I left the theater and headed home, I felt really down. As the movie was unfolding, I began to understand what it was actually going to be, and I thought the execution was fascinating in theory, but having to witness it was a punishing bore. I wish I had looked more into this. Maybe if I could have been more prepared for what Skinamarink had in store, I would have been able to meet it at its own terms. I really think this film would have a better chance at appealing to its viewers if its logline stated expressly that this film is set inside of a child's nightmare. I'll take a second here to acknowledge the fan theories that Kevin suffered a concussion and this film is his extended coma dream. Plenty of other people say this film is a rumination on child abuse and neglect. I don't know. I think maybe it's just simply a nightmare. But it's as if it assumes we're familiar with bite-sized nightmares, and it throws us into the deep end of that world, down into the Marianas Trench of a 5-year-old's unending nightmare. And not just thematically, this film is the most accurate depiction of what childhood dreams are actually like. Meandering, unfocused, figuratively and literally, rarely depicting a clear human form, and uncomfortably abstract. This approach has worked gangbusters on some viewers, who state that this film pushes them to tap into those forgotten feelings and memories, leaving them naked and afraid, silently weeping in their seats. For us others, I don't know. The trick just doesn't work. That's all there is to it. And here I'll acknowledge that many detractors are calling this film pretentious, which it's not. It's really not. It's just simply an experimental film. Art house cinema and pretension are not mutually exclusive. Go touch grass. You've spent too much time in front of the screen, dearie. Why don't you go play outside? Sure, while I was sitting there, I was reminded of nightmares I had long forgotten. When I think about it, this film should have worked on me. I had terrible nightmares as a child. Not just nightmares, night terrors. Abominable. One night I awoke from a night terror in a fit of screams, and I was so inconsolable that a neighbor called the police. My imagination tortured me as a child. So why didn't I revert back to that terrified state as other viewers had? I feel that this film is perhaps too literal in its translation of childhood fear and trauma to be relatable to every adult viewer. You know, when you grow up, you do grow out of that child mindset. And though this film may remind me of those odd and abstract nightmares of yore, I can't seem to put myself back in the frame of mind that would find this scary in any sense of the word. Sure, when I was a kid, I too would have nightmares where I would wake up and my mother would be missing. Now I'm in my 30s, and I'm living a waking nightmare where I go to the grocery store and all of the eggs are missing. I can't stop thinking about this film's cinematography. How truly awful it was to experience in a theater setting. That's it. Avant-garde experimental films like this, they're a trip. And being trips, they require the proper set and setting. You can't just throw it on anywhere at any time. You need to be prepared, and you need a proper environment. The next night, Saturday the 14th, I tried watching Heck at home, alone, with the lights off, gacked up on nighttime cold meds, which I figured had to be the most pristine, perfect set and setting for this material. Heck fixes all of the technical issues I had with Skinamarink. It's not as degraded, it doesn't contain any random loud jump scares, and it's around 72 minutes shorter. But I still wasn't connecting with it. So, I guess that's it. I'm just not the audience for this film. I would like to be. I do enjoy avant-garde and experimental film, and they do often work for me, or at least entertain me. The word Lynchian has been thrown around a lot in the Skinamarink. Yes, thank you. Yes, that is really fucking clever. And yes, it is rather reminiscent of David Lynch's own debut feature film, Eraserhead. Another surreal dream play that is light on dialogue and traditional narrative structure. It also reminds one being myself really, of Gaspar Noé's 2009 ruthless, soul-destroying mindfuck fantasia, Enter the Void. However, I do find Skinamarink to be far more punishing. And I do mean that as a compliment. I have never witnessed a narrative film of this stature that was this brutally experimental. With every shot of a wall, or a couch, or a corner of a room, you are acutely aware of the utter absence of humanity, and the dawning realization of how foreign this feels to your brain. The way this film constantly reminds us there are people here in this space just outside of the frame, but denies us the comforting pleasure of seeing another human being face to face. It is truly excruciating. It is a maddening level of alienation. I don't think Skinamarink's chief intent is to scare or horrify us. Certainly not in the mainstream sense. The film's goal is to discomfort, to disorient. It aims to upset you. Of course, it hopes that its hypnosis trick works on you and you regress to an infantile bedwetting piss baby. But whether you connect with it or not, you're going to come out of it very upset. Does this mean that the film ultimately works? That it actually achieves what it sets out to be? That's about as unclear as its final frame. I still can't say enough about how overdone the grain effects are. Be as off-putting as you want. I don't think a film should look so bad that I have to stop looking directly at it halfway through. In fact, I don't think any of the grain was necessary, really. Even if it's trying to ape the look of an old film, this is set in 1995. Nothing from that era looked like this. And its most egregious sin after all of the fake film grain is the jump scares. They are truly awful and baffling. They come off as unearned, and their presence feels unnatural in a dream narrative, and so they took me out of the film every single time. The few bite-sized nightmare shorts I've seen generate chills from well-constructed quiet mood and unsettling dread. So I'm not sure why Ball felt that they were necessary here. Take those two elements away, and to me, this is a film that deserves attention of a sort. And attention it is certainly getting. Remember, this film cost only $15,000 to make. On the night I'm recording this, it has just surpassed a box office total of $1 million. In a weird way, I'm honored to be one of the people who were tricked into seeing this on opening weekend. I have a Shudder subscription. I could have just waited for the upcoming streaming drop. Instead, I went day of release across town to the Skinamarink, the only theater in my county that was screening it at the time. Now, it's playing at my local AMC. I'm an AMC Stubs A-list subscriber. I paid $12.83 to get edged for 2 hours, develop eye strain, and leave angry. $12.83. Do you know how many eggs I could get for that kind of scratch? 4. 4 eggs. Fuck it. Take my money. Take it. Because at the end of the day, I want weird movies to be made. I want weird movies to be seen. I want to engage with and support experimental films. Whether I like them or not is kind of besides the point. Ultimately, my individual enjoyment is not the end goal. For experimental film, the end goal is to be just that, an experiment, to break the rules and try new ideas and test it all out on us, the audience. Results be damned. In the end, I still don't really know how to handle Skinamarink or its polarizing success. I think the film should be seen, but I can't really, honestly, in good faith, outright recommend it. My best advice is to head over to Bite Size Nightmares and check out the short film Heck, preferably at night, preferably in the dark. If that intrigues you, give Skinamarink a shot. To borrow a phrase, I don't agree with what it does, but I will defend to the death its right to do it. And I suspect this Kyle Edward Ball fellow is really on to something. This may well be the start of a successful career for a new groundbreaking filmmaker. I'm not fallen under his spell just yet, but what dreams may come.